Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura Scott. I work for Kadlec Healthy Ages, and this is our March program. I cannot believe how quick the season is now into spring. It's like going to be crazy. I have kind of put out on the chairs about every other chair. This month is our colorectal cancer screening month, and you can get a free screening kit by just calling the phone number that's on the yellow sheet. We will mail it to you. This is a program that Kadlec Foundation and Healthy Ages has done for several years now, and it's free, and we want you to take care of your health. So that's one little thing. The other, on the pink sheet, once again, we are offering our end-of-life planning issues seminar. We do this quarterly. We have law, taxes, asset protection, a funeral director, financial planning, 3 hours at the Hampton Inn. This program, we try to keep it to a small group, about 30 people. So once again, too, on here is a phone number to call if you're interested. If you have already attended one of these, share the information with your friends. I think you probably found out that it was very worthwhile and very educational. Today we have Dr. Wassim Khawandi, who is with the Kadlec Nephrology. And once again, you know me, I like to get on Google or something like that and find something out. And he has attended, oh my gosh, the Emory University with a specialty in nephrology. He had a residency in internal medicine at Indiana University School of Medicine and the fellowship in nephrology at Emory University. So please help me welcome Dr. Khawandi.
Thank you all for being here. I want to check, first of all, can everybody hear me okay? Okay, good. So I think when I look at this crowd, I recognize some faces. Some of them are familiar, some of them are not. Some of them are my patients. And that got me thinking, you know, is that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, maybe on the positive side, they like me so much they want to follow me everywhere I go. On the negative side is you can always think, well, maybe I'm not doing a good job at my office. They want to hear it here. So I'll tell you all the secrets today, guys. Okay? And by the way, for those of you who have an appointment tomorrow or next week, this is not an appointment, okay? Let's be clear. Okay. Now, I'm going to be talking about chronic kidney disease. By no means this is meant to be 100% comprehensive. It's a huge topic. We can talk about it for about 8 hours, literally, and not finish. I'm trying to give you a brief discussion about chronic kidney disease so that you understand what the disease is about, how you diagnose it, who's at risk, you know, how big of a problem do we have here in the United States and in the Tri-Cities, and give you kind of a little bit of hints here and there about things you should be looking for. So, with that in mind, let me go ahead and start. So why do we talk about chronic kidney disease? Why all of you are here interested about chronic kidney disease? Obviously because the problem is huge. In the United States, as of 2012, there are roughly about 430,000 patients on dialysis. Of those, the majority are on what we call hemodialysis, which is dialysis through the blood. For those of you who have no idea what dialysis is about, it's a technique meant to filter your blood so that blood is returned back to you clean, just like what the kidney would have done. It's usually something that you would do three times a week, but there are different variations of it where you can do up to daily. We're not going to go into the details. But I want you to focus here a little bit on the curve that you see going up. And probably my pointer is not working very well, and you cannot see it in the back. But this up here, the big line here, this is how dialysis patients, the number of dialysis patients growing with time. This is the years, this is how many in thousands, and you can see it's going exponentially. So, the next question is, why that is the case? Any idea? Guesses? Diabetes. Food, drink. Heart. Maybe we're getting older. Genetics. Blood pressure. Okay, all of these are excellent ideas because all of these are right. Every single one you mentioned is correct. Single one you said. Diabetes, high blood pressure, aging, diet, genetics, all of these are correct. As a matter of fact, the number one cause for people to be on dialysis with kidney failure is this red segment here, and that's diabetes. It accounts roughly to about 40% of people who are on dialysis. Now, not everybody who has diabetes necessarily will end up with kidney failure and dialysis, but roughly about a third of those people will end up on dialysis. The second largest group is high blood pressure. People who have uncontrolled high blood pressure will have a kidney failure, and about a third of people who are on dialysis today have high blood pressure as the cause for kidney failure. There are some other causes. We're not going to go into those because that's where it gets really complicated. This is a graph that you see in the green line going up. You see the number of reasons why end-stage renal disease, ESRD stands for end-stage renal disease. Why is it growing? And you see diabetes curve going up tremendously, almost exponentially. And that's the main reason why people end up with kidney disease. So the number one driving force in this country is diabetes. It's not, rare diseases. There are some genetic diseases, but they're not. They're kind of pretty much flat. The most cause is diabetes. And why is that important? Because diabetes is a modifiable factor. It's something you can control by medication, and you can control by diet, weight loss, other measures. And until 2010, this was really a problem. For the first time in 2010, we think that we started slowing the rate of kidney disease resulting from diabetes. Time still have to show, but that was the first time we had a slight break in that pattern. Now, we talked about high blood pressure. What you're going to see here on the horizontal axis here is blood pressure. And you see at the last one here, blood pressure above 140 systolic, then 130 to 140, 124 to 130, and so on. And then on the vertical axis is your risk, relative risk. And what you see here is as your blood pressure on average goes up, your risk of having kidney disease goes up. And you can see if your blood pressure above 140, you probably have somewhere around 5 times the risk of anyone walking down the street with no high blood pressure. So we talked about diabetes, we talked about high blood pressure. Now, financially, it costs a lot to take care of kidney disease. And what I'm showing you here is end-stage kidney disease. This is in billions of dollars. Today, the government pays about $40 billion to take care of dialysis patients. To give you a perspective what 40 billion would be, if you look at the National Institute of Health, all of the research and funding that goes into National Institute of Health as of now. By the way, these are updated from your slides because I actually went in and brought the latest data. The National Institute of Health spends about $30 billion a year on all research combined. That includes heart, diabetes, high blood pressure, genetic diseases, weird diseases. That costs the government $30 billion. And we spend $40 billion on a single disease. That's end-stage renal disease. So it's a huge, huge problem. Not only that, end-stage renal disease patients, people on dialysis, account for less than 2% of the total Medicare population. But the government spends a little bit over 6% on this population. So it's a very costly disease. Give you another perspective. It costs on average about $85,000 per patient per year if you're on hemodialysis. It costs a little bit less if you're on peritoneal dialysis, somewhere around $65,000. And it costs about $35,000 if you have a kidney transplant. So, now I gave you a little bit of perspective, hopefully caught your attention. Let's talk about what does the kidney do. After all, I've been talking about kidney failure, but what does the kidney do? Well, the kidney is a very important organ. It does a lot of functions. It clears your blood from toxins. It makes you take the extra fluid that you ingest throughout the day and filter it out. Otherwise, if that mechanism was not there, you know, you drink 5 liters and you have no way to get them out. You'll be in problem. It does a lot of functions that have to do with hormones. It secretes hormones that have to do with, you know, bone growth. It has hormones that have to do with bone generation. It has hormones that have to do with bone marrow function, producing red blood cells. And we're going to come back to this. And of course, makes you go to the bathroom. Now, that could be good, that could be bad, but for all purposes, it's good to be able to go to the bathroom. Now, give you importance of the kidney. It consumes about 25% of your heart output. It's that much, how much the heart, so roughly about 1/4 of what the heart pumps goes to the kidney because it needs to continuously over 24/7 to filter the blood. If you were to count how many liters go through that organ on a daily basis, it's about 180 liters. 180 liters, I'm trying to see how much would that be in gallons. So roughly about 40 gallons plus every day it has to take care of. And think about it, it's so smart that eventually it filters everything down to about half a gallon at the end of the day that is form of waste, and you dump it out. Now, one important thing about kidney disease and about kidneys is they technically work as a mesh. So they filter, it's a smart mesh, it's not a stupid mesh, it's a very smart organ. It recognizes what toxins are there, dumps them out, and then doesn't allow the good healthy proteins to seep out. So one of the things that sometimes people ask me, well, my doctor mentioned to me I've been losing protein. What does that mean? Should I eat less protein? Well, no, the answer is not. The significance of if you're having protein in the urine, it means there's a microscopic damage in that mesh. And that's what we need to address. So remember, healthy kidneys do not dump protein in the urine. Now, what's the definition of chronic kidney disease? The definition of chronic kidney disease is a reduction in the function of the kidney lasting for more than 3 months. That's key. Because sometimes you can have a temporary reduction in kidney function. That could be, you know, for a week, for 2. You know, let's say you had a nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, you got dehydrated, kidney function goes down. That doesn't mean you have chronic kidney disease. That means you have what we call acute kidney injury or acute kidney disease. That's usually reversible. But if it has persisted more than 3 months, there's a good chance that you might have chronic kidney disease. So one of them is a function issue. The other thing is, if there's any structural damage to the kidney, is also, even if the function is fine, it's called also chronic kidney disease. For example, if you have one kidney that has shrunk and is no longer functioning, but the other kidney is making up the difference, that's still considered chronic kidney disease. If you have a mass sitting on your kidney, that's considered structural kidney disease. That's considered also kidney disease. Now, so who is susceptible to have kidney disease? I mean, that's the $1 million question. All of you came here to find out, do I have kidney disease or not? But I want to give you an example. On the recent statistics, if we take that definition of chronic kidney disease, which is 3-month reduction in function or structural damage or some form of protein in the urine, roughly 1 in 8 patients, 1 of 8 of the population sitting here would have chronic kidney disease. So 1 out of 8. I don't want to create a panic, but it's degrees of kidney disease. And so on average, 1 out of 8 patients walking down the street will have some form of chronic kidney disease by that definition. It's that prevalent. Now, that doesn't mean all of them are going to dialysis. Please don't misunderstand that. It means that there's a good chance one of them might have more advanced than the others. Okay? Now, so what are the things that would put you for susceptibility? You're more likely to have kidney disease. Of course, as we age, like anything else, we're more susceptible to diseases. Our repair mechanisms become impaired. We're not able to correct any damage. That's one reason. The functioning units of the kidney start kind of scarring down, like our skin, wrinkles, you know. The kidneys also get scarred. Excuse me. Race. Race plays a role, and I'm going to show you what's the difference between, let's say, a white Caucasian person versus an African American versus an Asian versus a Hispanic, because there's variation, quite a bit of variation. And that's where the genetic, somebody said genetics, that's where the genetic comes in. Socioeconomic factors. And why is, you know, if somebody has income of 50,000 versus 200,000, why does it make a difference? Well, probably access to care, because the one who has 50,000 probably cannot see the physician on a regular basis, cannot get the test done on a regular basis. The one who has 200,000 is more likely to have access. And then, of course, we talked about genetic factors and family history. If you have a family history of chronic kidney disease, you're more than likely to be susceptible. That tells us that. That's why when we interview you in the clinic, we ask, is there any family member who has been on dialysis who has had chronic kidney disease? Reason is we ask that, well, if the genetics that predispose your mother or father to be on dialysis, probably you have similar genes. So, puts you there. Now, there are factors that you acquire throughout your life that will make you more susceptible. We talked about them. Showed you the slide before. Diabetes. It's a modifiable factor, but if you have it, it will make the loss of kidney function faster. It causes microscopic damage if it's not controlled. High blood pressure, of course. Autoimmune diseases, things like lupus, you know, Sjogren syndrome, things that are weird, I don't want to get you too concerned about, but things that where the immunity attacks the kidney. These are also will predispose you to kidney failure. And then, if you have recurrent kidney infections, you can scar down the kidneys and eventually have kidney problems. If you have multiple stone attacks where the stones are forming over and over and over and you're blocking the urinary tract, you can scar down the kidney and eventually end up with kidney failure. This is a map of the United States, and what you see right here is a difference that I was talking about in region. You can see the darker it is, the worse the kidney disease per population. And you can see in the south and southeast, it's much worse than in the northwest, for example, luckily. But that has to do also with two things: race, more African Americans, more Hispanics in the south and southeast, and also socioeconomic factors. You know, I don't know how many of you have been to Atlanta. I trained in Atlanta. You know, a lot of lack of access to health care, even in the metro city, a lot of high blood pressure, a lot of diabetes. It's a very sad story. So, you can see in our region, it's not too bad yet. But if I show you time frame, if I were to show you, 2002 to 2010, you see it's going up. It's not as bad and not as fast as in the areas I'm showing here, but it is going up. Now, this is the relative risk by your ethnicity, or I should say, by your color. Because African Americans have 3.5 to 4 times risk of having kidney disease compared to a Caucasian. A Native American has twice the risk of a Caucasian. The Asian Pacific Islanders, 1.3 times of a Caucasian. And the Hispanics, roughly in that neighborhood, about 1.5 times. And this is just based on race alone. Now, somebody mentioned age, and I want to show you that this is true. This top line here, I don't know how many of you can see the pointer because I cannot see it, but for those of you who are seeing the pointer right there, this line is the group that's above 75 of age. And this is how many people per million population have kidney disease. And if you take this line here that's going up, top line, that's the population that's above 75. The second line is 65 to 74. So that tells you per population, the older you are, the more likely you're going to get kidney disease. Part of it, as I said, repair mechanisms, probably exposure to more medications, probably more likelihood of having diabetes or high blood pressure as you get older. So, the next question naturally comes, who should we test for kidney disease? Based on what I told you already, anyone who has diabetes, high blood pressure, a family history with kidney failure, somebody who has heart disease, because there's great connection between heart failure and kidneys. You push diuretics, kidneys go down, heart failure gets worse, push diuretics, kidney gets worse, accumulates fluid, and keep going. And that's what we call now the cardio-renal syndrome, just on the side. People who have autoimmune diseases like lupus, exposure to certain types of medications that could put you at risk for kidney disease, like what we call non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. Things like ibuprofen, Motrin, Aleve, Advil, Celebrex, Mobic. All of these, if you take them for a long period of time, increases your chances of having kidney injury. Certain drugs that are used for autoimmunity, to suppress your immunity, also can affect you. Now, if we detect somebody who has blood or protein in the urine, just, you go to your doctor for something else, oh, let's go and get this urine checked. You dip the urine, you find some blood or some protein, boom, there's a problem there. If you see blood or protein in the urine, then that means there could be a chance that you could have some form of kidney disease. Doesn't mean every time that you have kidney disease, because there are a lot of reasons for protein and blood in the urine. It could be transient. So how do we test it? There are a couple of tests. One is through blood test, where we check something called creatinine, and from that we make an estimate for the kidney function called GFR. And for those of you who get labs, you look now, it's mandatory, all labs report it, called GFR, and it says above 60 or 59 or 8 or 40 or 30 or 20, whatever number is, that tells you what the kidney function is. Or if you find protein, remember I told you the kidney should not be leaking protein, but if you detect protein consistently on several measures in the urine by something called SPOT, urine albumin to creatinine ratio, then that tells me there's something funny going on in the kidneys. So that's how we test initially, how we screen. Now obviously there are a lot of other screening modalities we can look for depending on the circumstance, but these are the most common. Now, kidney disease is not created the same. Kidney disease is a continuum, and it's divided from 1 to 5. 1 being mild, right here, and 5 on my right-hand side here is kidney failure. And we define kidney failure as below 15 cc's per minute. That number, GFR, I was telling you about, if it's below 15, that you've entered stage 5. Stage 1 is kidney damage. Like you have one kidney that's shrunk, not working, but overall your kidney function is still okay. So you took a hit, but you were able to compensate for it. That's what we call stage 1. Or if you have a little bit of protein in the urine, like happens in diabetics, the kidney function is still okay, and you look at this and say, so do I have kidney disease? Yeah, by definition you have kidney disease because you have protein in the urine, which means there's microscopic damage, but the kidney function is still being compensated by the kidney. The kidney, remember, is a smart organ. It's going to try to do whatever it can to compensate. Eventually it gets to a point where it's a tipping point, and that's it. The other thing I want to tell you, and this is, by the way, I get it from my clinic because a lot of people ask me, well, Doug, how come I have kidney disease? I don't seem to have any problems. I go to the bathroom every hour, and not only that, I don't have any pain here, and they tell me about their belly or their back, and there's no pain. Well, kidney disease almost never gives you pain. The only exception, if you have a kidney stone, sure, you'll be in pain, and I'm being told it's worse than delivering a baby. I never delivered, so I can't judge to that. But kidney infection also might give you pain. But for the rest, majority of people, it's a silent disease, and that's where it's dangerous, because if you don't screen for it, if you don't know what the risk factors are, it could be missed. And in Atlanta, where there's no access to healthcare, people would show up at my door with already stage 5, literally, I'd meet them, nice to meet you, let's go to dialysis unit together. I mean, literally, no joking. I would put a line in there, dialysis unit, that's it. There's nothing I can do. Fortunately, what I've seen here in the Tri-Cities, people are a little bit more proactive about their health. They have a little bit more access to care, and so most of the cases I see tend to be, somewhere around here, mid, like around 3, level 3. And this is the pyramid, how kidney disease is. And I'm going to tell you what I've written here. Majority of people tend to be, this is by population, by the way. So 4% of the population in the United States has some form of chronic kidney disease. Most of them are in stage 3, in the middle. And stage 3 is by definition GFR, that number I told you about, below 60. About 3% are in stage 2, which is essentially, if you do your labs, probably you're not going to be able to see much of a problem by the number. GFR is going to be above 60, but there is some dysfunction happening in the kidney. Stage 4 is when your kidney function drops below 30%. That's what we call stage 4. And typically, it's about 0.2% of the population only. Now you're going to tell me, well, how come that majority of people are 4.3% of the population more in 3 than 4? Wouldn't that, wouldn't think as you get worse, you should have more? Well, the truth is, number one, most of the people between 3 and 4 have heart disease, and unfortunately, people die from other causes. By the way, I want to ask the crowd here, what's the number 1 cause for people to die for those who have kidney disease? What's the number 1 cause they die from? What's that? Heart attack. Any other guesses? Okay, heart attack wins. Heart attack is the number 1 cause why people die from kidney disease. It's not the kidneys. Now, the kidneys make it worse, make you age faster, make your vessels calcify, become hardened. But it's not the cause. I mean, it's not because of the kidneys you died, it's because of your heart. And this is a slide that I wanted to share with you because this is what I projected in the Tri-Cities. So what I did is I took the national data right here, and I projected if everything was the same in the Tri-Cities, how many patients we would have in the Tri-Cities. And for stage 1, you can see there's about 8,500 patients in the Tri-Cities who have stage 1 chronic kidney disease, which means, again, to remind you, pretty much normal kidney function by numbers. Creatinine is okay. GFR is more than 60 by the lab. But they have either a protein or a blood in the urine or some structural damage. About 7,600 in stage 2, which means slight decline in kidney function, but not enough to flag anything on the lab. Now, this is where we start seeing patients, and that's where people start referring to us, and there's about 11,000 people in the Tri-Cities, roughly, who have chronic kidney disease stage 3. Now, these are not numbers officially published by anyone. These are projections that I made based on the numbers, and I've assumed that the population here is similar to the rest of the United States, which is not exactly true, but gives us an idea. For those who have severe drop in kidney function, meaning GFR below 30, about 500. And those people who have less than 15 or are on dialysis, roughly about 250. And really this matches very well what we see in the Tri-Cities, because if I were to go to the Tri-Cities dialysis centers and ask them how many patients they have and sum everything up, probably we have somewhere around 255 to 260 patients right now. So that tells me to some extent this is correct. Now, let's talk about the heart, because heart is the number 1 cause why people have an unanticipated event, which is death. Now, it seems like we don't know which one is the chicken, which one is the egg. Because remember, what causes kidney disease? We said diabetes, high blood pressure. What causes heart disease? Diabetes, high blood pressure. So it's like, 2 causes for the 2 diseases, and it's logical to make sense that, oh, well, it causes kidney disease and heart disease. That's why you see a lot of correlation between the 2. But the question is, does kidney disease by itself cause heart disease, it seems likely that it does it independent of the other factors. And the reason I say this is, for those people that we put on dialysis, it seems like it's like you age with time. And I'm going to show you a graph that's interesting. Now, one of the things you always want to make sure is you manage high blood pressure, manage diabetes, manage low cholesterol, get your cholesterol down, stop smoking, lose weight, exercise to modify what we consider traditional risk factors for the heart. There are some risk factors that we still don't understand as physicians or as scientists. Things like have to do with what's peculiar about kidney disease. What is it in their blood that makes them more prone to have, atherosclerosis, clogging, calcification. There are a lot of theories, I'm not going to get into those, but there are some other factors that we still don't understand very well. So, remember the graph I showed you before about the high blood pressure and kidney disease, how they go hand in hand? This is a graph of, depending on your stage of kidney disease, so this is here, on your left-hand side is stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, stage 5. And as you progress to different stages, your likelihood of having cardiovascular disease goes up. So for example, on the right-hand side, stage 5, you can see it's roughly double what it is in stage 4, and it's double what's in stage 3, and 3 is double what's in stage 2, and so on. So it seems like you double your risk factors almost as you progress from one stage to the other. Now, this is the interesting slide I wanted to show you. Let me explain a little bit what that means. On the horizontal line down here is your age. And on the vertical line is your percent of having death from cardiovascular disease. So the higher it is, on the vertical axis means higher rate of death. Let me go here. So if you take a 25-year-old guy who should be healthy with no medical problems in the general population, the risk of having a cardiac event is probably less than 1 in 1,000. That same guy, if he was to start dialysis for whatever reason, his risk will be somewhere around roughly 7 to 8%, but in relative terms about 1,000 times more than the guy who was with no kidney disease. So 1,000 times for a 25 years old, just being on dialysis. Now, let's look at this a little bit different. Let's take the guy who's 25 years old on dialysis and compare it to an 85-year-old who has no kidney disease. His rate would be here, somewhere around 7 to 8% on an annual basis. Look at the guy who has no kidney disease, about the same. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you, if you are 25 years old on dialysis, your risk of death is similar to an 85-year-old with no medical problems. To me, that sounds like an accelerated aging. Remember I was telling you it's like you accelerate, you move in time? That's the same thing. So, and speaking by the way of mortality, of death on kidney disease, especially in advanced stages, your risk of death at 5 years on dialysis is less than, so being alive at 5 years is less than 30%. On average, we say it's about 20% per year is the death rate in the United States. In our centers here, we've been a little bit better. We've been about 15%. Now, whether this is because we're doing a good job or this is because the population is a little bit better or more proactive, I really don't know the answer. But we have a less rate of mortality in our centers here compared to the United States. Let me ask you this. If somebody tells you today you have to choose one disease, I'm going to give you two diseases, colon cancer or end-stage renal disease. Which one would you choose? Colon cancer. It has less death rate than end-stage renal disease. That's why we call it end-stage renal disease. Remember we talked about the kidney being an organ that secretes hormones? People with kidney disease frequently get anemia. And sometimes some of you have heard about giving them injections to boost up the blood count. The reason for that is the following. The kidney secretes a hormone called erythropoietin that stimulates the bone marrow to produce red blood cells, which carry your blood oxygen to all the organs. And anytime the blood oxygen goes down, like if you bleed or something, it stimulates, give a signal to the kidney boosts up the hormone, stimulates bone marrow, makes more blood. But if you have a kidney damage, kidney failure, you cannot make that. That's why there's a high percentage of patients who are on dialysis today, I would say probably 95% or more, would require epogen given to them during dialysis to keep their bone marrow going. Now, if you're stage 3, probably you're not going to require epogen, not very often. If you're stage 4, you're more likely to require it. As you progress with kidney failure, you're more likely to require the epogen, the erythropoietin. Also, kidney disease, remember I talked about bone issues. Kidneys give a signal to the parathyroid gland in your neck to secrete and regulate a hormone called the parathyroid hormone. The parathyroid hormone overlooks your bone health. You know, forms bone, destroys bone, stops when it doesn't need to form bone, goes on when it needs to form bone or destroy bone. When the kidney is not functioning, that signal gets lost. And so you're more likely to have problems with bone, becomes very fragile, bone fractures, etc. That's why very often in kidney disease we give people vitamin D, active vitamin D, to try to regulate that mechanism and simulate what the kidney would do. Now, so what's the goal of care? Why do we want to manage people with kidney disease? Now that I told you the bad story, let's talk about what our goals would be. Of course, I want to slow the decline in kidney function, if I can. I want to prevent cardiovascular disease, because I know that that's the #1 reason why they die. And number 3 is I want to detect and manage complications like anemia, bone disease, electrolytes, high potassium, low potassium, and make sure that the vessels are relatively healthy. In my clinic, for those of you who come to me, a lot of times you see me, checking hemoglobin periodically to make sure the blood count is okay. You see me checking the parathyroid for the bone. You see me a lot of times examining your carotid vessels to make sure you're not calcifying here and having a stroke. And over until I turn blue, telling you, please check your blood pressure, bring them with you so I can manage your blood pressure better. So, does really early intervention make a difference? I think so. Think about it this way. The black line going down is if you are untreated, and it will be pretty much a free fall for your kidney function from about 100, 120 cc's per minute, all the way down till your kidney fails. If we intervene, 3 or 4 years in advance, like the gray line is, we probably can gain 2 to 4 years, additional years, without you needing dialysis. Now, that's not great, but it's better than being 4 years already on dialysis. Maybe we can get you a kidney transplant. If you show up later, we can still make a difference, but the difference is less, like in the red line. See here? So yeah, we extended you from 7 years without dialysis to 9 years. The theme of this is the sooner we intervene, the sooner we able to optimize your blood pressure, your diabetes, optimize the bone management, the anemia, we're more than likely to be able to extend this a little bit further out. And how do we do that? First of all, goal is to maintain your blood pressure below 140/90. Now, I say 140/90 because for a majority of patients, below 140/90 is good enough. Now, some patients we need to be a little bit more aggressive and go below 130/80, but I'm not going to go into the details who and where and how. It's a little bit more technical. There are certain classes of drugs that we use called ACE inhibitors. Lisinopril, enalapril are classic examples here. Or angiotensin receptor blockers, losartan, Micardis, other drugs. These are all drugs that slow down the progression of kidney disease. They work to help the kidney down the line preserve its function. These drugs, by the way, are used also by cardiologists, so a lot of people come to us already on some of those drugs, which is good. So we're kind of hitting 2 birds with 1 stone. The other thing is diabetes. A big chunk of diabetes is really trying to keep your blood glucose well controlled. Now, previously we used to say we need your glucose to be really, really, really controlled. The data does not suggest that a very tight control, meaning, A1C below 6 is any better than below 7. So for my patients, I say, 7 or less is reasonable. And this is based on recent data, probably in the last 4 years. If you asked me this question 6 years ago, I would say definitely go below 6, but the data did not support that. Now, you're going to say, well, is this based on science or is this based on, just your guesses? No, there was a study actually back in '98. It was actually a United Kingdom study, not a US study, called UKPDS. And what it showed is, if you do good glucose control, you can reduce the microvascular endpoints, including kidney disease, by about 25%. If you do blood pressure control, you reduce the risk by 37%. Now, I'm just talking about this here, but look, for those who reduce their blood pressure, stroke went down by 44%, and if you combine those, the effect becomes more additive effect. The other thing that I emphasize in my clinic is low salt diet. Low salt is very important. Unfortunately, in the US diet, it's everywhere. Everything that you would not suspect has salt. It does have salt, I promise you. Even if it doesn't taste salty. Tasting saltiness has nothing to do with how salty it is. Because I can add, 20 grams of salt to your diet. If I mix it right, I can make you not feel that it's salty, but that doesn't mean the salt went anywhere. It's just you cannot taste it. And that's what the industry does, because they figured out a long time ago, while salt is a good preservative, salt makes food taste good and people want more and more. And if you combine salt with fat, that's even better. And even how about salt, fat, and sugar? That's even great. I mean, think about all the food you like and think what components they have. And if you think about those 3 elements, you know that they're getting you because they get you hooked on salt, fat, and sugar. Remember that combo. So I emphasize low salt diet, and technically I tell people go fresh on everything. If you're going to do anything, try to cook it yourself. Don't get prepackaged meals because these are loaded. Pizza is a no-no. Sorry. Chinese food is a no-no. Soups that are packaged are a no-no. Look at the can of soup and you tell me how much salt you have. Typically I tell about 1,500 milligrams of sodium is enough per day if you want to go, which means essentially not much. Now, there's a little bit of debate about the role of protein because a lot of people tell me, should I go with low protein or not? There was one study, actually the guy who did the study is my mentor, the one I worked with. His name is William Mitch, and he's the leader about low protein. And in their study, they showed a small, reasonable effect, 2% at 3 years if you restrict your protein. In my opinion, and this is sometimes where the student deviates from the master, is if you're going to go low protein, what are you going to be eating? High carb, right? And if you're diabetic, what does that mean? So you have to weigh the odds of X, Y, Z. I would say usually a Mediterranean type of a diet where you have balanced portions of protein versus carbs is a reasonable diet to consider, as long as it's low salt. In some extreme cases, I send people to nutritional consult to tailor the diet specific to them. And then, big thing is you want to avoid is anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen, Motrin. Some people think that they're like, a gum or like a dessert or something, and they take them just whenever, they feel like, time to take an ibuprofen, let's move on. And maybe they give some to their friends. Well, that's not what it's intended. Those drugs, you have to treat them, even though they're over the counter, treat them as drugs, as medications. That's really important. Remember, these are medications. In most cases, I say, try to avoid anti-inflammatory drugs, especially if you have pre-existing kidney disease or if you're on one of those medications like ACE inhibitors. Remember lisinopril I talked about, enalapril, losartan. Try to stay away from those medications. If you're on a diuretic, that's another reason people sometimes have kidney failure. The combination of anti-inflammatory drugs with a diuretic, some blood pressure medications is not usually a good combo and can lead to decline in kidney function. The dye that they give you, every time you go to an ER, you complain of some ache somewhere, you get a CAT scan, they inject you with a dye. That also could be detrimental to your kidneys. Now, I'm not saying you should not get the CAT scan. I'm not saying you should not get a contrast. But It's very important if you have kidney disease to tell the physician, listen, I have kidney disease. And I know that most of them, especially at Kadlec, they do screen you ahead of time to look for kidney disease. But it's important to know that dye is, the IV contrast, is detrimental to the kidney. You can take the oral contrast, but not the IV. And then certain antibiotics. Gentamicin is one of them. In general, my theory is if it's not necessary to take the medication, probably it's better not to take it. You will have a side effect one way or another. Just take only my medications. So, bottom line is, you need to consult a kidney specialist early, because as I showed you on that graph, the sooner we intervene, there's a more chance that we can help your kidneys. You want to monitor the blood count, you want to monitor the parathyroid hormone and the bone disease. We want to manage the cardiovascular risk, try to reduce your risk of heart attacks. So having you on a lipid lowering agent, getting your blood pressure below target, making sure your diabetes is controlled are essential. These are some references, I had here for you to look at. The other reference, if you're just interested for curiosity, some of those slides I got them from the United States Renal Data System. If you Google USRDS, it gives you up-to-date kind of slide formation, just like ones I showed you. How about kidney disease? How many people have in the United States, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a huge chapter, but if you're interested and have nothing else to do, be my guest. I hope this was informative. This is by no means is comprehensive. This is meant really to give you a general idea. As I said, each topic we could spend on probably at least an hour. But I wanted just to give you a quick bird's eye view about everything here, and hopefully this was informative. I'll be happy to take any questions. Thank you. Yes. So the question is about the Polycystic Kidney Foundation. Let me just briefly say what polycystic kidney disease is. Polycystic kidney disease is one of the most prevalent genetic diseases ever happened on Earth. As a matter of fact, it's the most common genetic diseases, and a lot of people live and die without knowing that they have polycystic kidney disease. Now, not every time you have a polycystic kidney, not every time you have a cyst on the kidney means you have polycystic kidney disease, because polycystic kidney disease has certain criteria. His question was about, is it worth donating to the PKD Foundation? And the answer is yes, because the PKD, while the NIH spends money, it's up to discretion of what the government sees as the #1 cause. For example, a lot of money is going, for example, for diabetes. There are some research going for polycystic, but when you donate to the PKD Foundation, it specifically goes to that disease entity. There's another, a disease like Fabry's disease, which is very rare. I mean, the government donates probably zero to that disease. It's rare. They don't want to worry about it right now. They have other priorities, I understand. But if you have a cause, I think you should still donate. So the question is, and this is actually, thank you for the question. A lot of people ask me, so I take aspirin. It's an anti-inflammatory drugs. Should I take it or not? 81 milligram of aspirin is not a problem. 325 milligram of an aspirin is probably not a problem. But once you start taking like 650 or above, like 2 tablets, 3 tablets, then it becomes an issue. Aspirin has less effect on the kidney than on the platelets and the heart. It does have some effect on the kidneys, but you have to really go on higher dosages. Yes? Yes, ma'am. Okay, so the question is, do I recommend vitamin D for stage 3 chronic kidney disease? Are we talking about over-the-counter supplement? Yes, okay. So vitamin D supplementation, there has been no study about vitamin D supplementation and chronic kidney disease. However, what I do in my practice is I screen you for vitamin D for a simple reason. If you're low on vitamin D, there's a good chance your parathyroid will be trying to compensate for that and overactive. So if you're deficient, before I even go to the activated vitamin D like calcitriol or really the more expensive ones, I try to supplement your natural vitamin D until I hit about 30 to 35. If I replenish your vitamin D by supplements and you're still having a problem with the parathyroid, then the next step would be is to put you on some of the active vitamin D metabolites. So the question is about what's the maintenance dose, and it varies between one individual and the other. Most of the time I recommend 2,000 per day. Some physicians go to 50,000 every week, which is fine. It all depends on your level of vitamin D, but the big thing is whenever you're on vitamin D, you should probably get it checked within 3 months to make sure you're not overshooting. Okay. So if somebody has basically susceptibility factor, meaning family history of kidney disease, and they do have a protein in the urine. Now the question is, do we know what the cause of protein in the urine? No. I would probably, depending, and again, this is a vague question because there's different levels of protein. So if they had like 5,000 milligrams per day, I would check them like tomorrow and work on it. If this was like a 200 milligram, I want to know what it is from. But on average, if you want to just take everybody without knowing any of the history, I would say probably at least every 6 months. Assuming that this is measured by quantitative measures, not by dipstick. So the question is about the kidney transplant and the age criteria. The age criteria vary a lot between one institution and another. And I've had people actually in their 70s being transplanted. It varies by the center. But essentially what they try to tell you is if your life expectancy is projected to be 5 years or less, probably it's not worth going through the hassle of getting a kidney transplant because, number one, we have shortage of kidney transplants. And number two is you're not going to even get the benefit of the kidney transplant. But having said that, that's not uniform. And I've had people who are very healthy, who like 77 or 78 years old, that I made a case saying, this is healthier than the 35 that you were going to transplant yesterday. And I said, his life expectancy is going to be, 15 years at least. So yeah, you can make exceptions. But the general rule is if you're going to live 5 years or less based on your comorbidities, heart disease, probably not. And by the way, do you know, just FYI, how many kidney transplants do we get here in the United States each year? Any guess? 2,800 transplants, kidney transplants. How many people are waiting for a kidney transplant in the United States? 90,000, and it's growing. It's going up. And the message for this is, for those of you who are healthy, please donate kidneys.
Did you say 2,800?
2,800 a year. Right. Now, one of the growing things about transplant in relation to your thing is family donation and even non-related members. And this is actually the highest growing number right now in the United States. It's not the cadaveric transplants, which is great because we want to see people willing to donate a kidney and give it. And you can live with one kidney with no problems. Yes, there was a question back in the back a little bit. So the question is, could chronic bladder infections affect the kidney? As a matter of fact, I saw a consult today specifically for that reason, is recurrent bladder infections, in theory, if the infection is going backwards towards the kidney, you can create scarring over time. And yes, you can get decline in kidney function over time. What's the question somewhere? Sure. So the question is, she's a recipient of living, is it living unrelated or living related? Your daughter. So living-related kidney transplant, and she wants to get the word out about the benefits of donation. I think events like this one, community talks would help. The other thing that I've seen, I had another kidney transplant patient who goes to our dialysis facilities and actually educates patients about kidney transplant. Because a lot of times I talk to them about, listen, you need to get a kidney transplant because being on dialysis forever is not going to get you anywhere, and the mortality is very high. A lot of them seem to be reluctant. They don't understand what the transplant is about, and they're afraid that, I don't want to go through another surgery. So you can start by the national kidney. Well, first of all, you can start locally here through any of the dialysis centers. You can give talks about kidney transplant, and we have a lot of support, like from social workers, etc. The other thing is events like this one, I think, would be valuable to talk about kidney transplant. You can even give your own experience. The other thing is that the National Kidney Foundation will sometimes sponsor those kind of events, and you can be a speaker in those. But thank you, yes. So for somebody at the age of 50, you said, what do they test? So typically when you go to a primary care physician, they should be doing at least once a year like a blood test, like usually it includes creatinine. It's called basic metabolic, it includes creatinine. So that tells them what the kidney function is, and they should be doing a urine dipstick at least, if they have no risk factors, to detect if there's any blood or if there's any protein in the urine. Now, if there's blood or protein, that doesn't mean you have kidney disease. It means we need to look into this further. There are some certain diagnostic tests further that we need to look into. Does that answer your question? So donation, is there any age limit? The answer is it all depends on your health, and there's no really age limit. If you're healthy at 80 and you want to donate, sure, they will take your kidney. What they do is now there's a program called Marginal Donor Program, which is essentially, instead of taking a kidney from a 20-year-old kid, put it in a 75-year-old gentleman who's probably not going to live more than 10 years, and the kidney is more than likely to last the recipient, they take it from a 60-year-old and put it there. So kind of trying to take this kidney that is not 100% healthy, you know, but it's good enough that if you put it in this gentleman, that's going to probably be more than enough. Even if the creatinine is not 100% normal, but it's good enough that he doesn't need to be on dialysis. And this is called the marginal donor transplants, and it's actually growing. A lot of my patients, I tell them, sign up for it. You know what? Get a kidney rather than not get at all. So the answer is, the question is about, so what's in the making right now for, as a hope for kidney disease? Stem cell is one of the promising researches being happening right now. We think that stem cells can go into the kidney and regenerate. So actually one of the experiments in rats have succeeded where they were able to regenerate kidney functions. It has not been translated yet to humans. So for those of you, by the way, who intend to travel to the Caribbean under the promise of stem cell transplant, please don't do it because it's not FDA approved yet, because I had some people do it. The other thing I want to mention is the FDA is sponsoring now a study for the first portable implantable dialysis machine, which is essentially basically a mechanical kidney. It's probably going to be that size. Now, we don't have it available yet, but University of California at San Francisco is working on this. And their promise is that they hope by 2017 to have some form of this out. What is it? Is that it's an implantable device there that replaces what the kidneys would have done up there. So this implantable device here is made of a bunch of filters that takes the blood, filters it, and gets it back to your bladder, like as if you have transplanted a kidney. Now, this is still in the making. Recent update from 2013, it succeeded in rats. The only problem they have right now is the machine is still bulky. So they're trying to get it to a size really where it can be implantable. Otherwise, you're going to be walking with a dialysis, you know, tagged to a dialysis machine, which is not practical. I think I had one question here. Well, it depends on their age. I mean, remember, if you're 85 years old, you're already bypassed your expectancy. Your life insurance already is paying off. So I'm sorry, I don't mean to be, but essentially the statistics is that your life expectancy is somewhere in the 80-82 range, and if you're 85, you already exceeded your expectations. So it really is a function of what your expected life expectancy versus your chronic kidney disease. If you have chronic kidney disease, even if it's stable, it is reduced compared to somebody who has no chronic kidney disease, you know, with the same age group. I hope that answers the question.
Not quite, but better than what I expected.
Okay. Well, what you were asking me is you want me to say, oh, you're going to live longer than your next neighbor? No, no one is going to live forever. But
What I was really asking is that if you are continuing to be stable.
it's better than the one who's declining.
Right.
Right.
So therefore, you don't have any statistics about people that are on stage 3 about what they normally would live.
Again, it has to do with your age, because, for example, if you're 85, let me give you an example. I told you, like, for example, the 30% survival at 5 years. This applies if you take everybody on dialysis. But if you were 85 to go on dialysis at the age of 85, probably your mortality is going to be 90% by the first year. So it's a function of age. You're already adding aging to an age system versus a 20-year-old who has pretty much healthy vessels, and now you're accumulating damage. So it takes some time for the damage to catch up. So I had 20 years old who have been 10 years on dialysis, and they beat all statistics. So, yes. Any last question? Okay, thank you all for your time.